What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil Requiem for you. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about that question I always seemingly have to ask anytime there's a brand new character introduced in a Resident Evil game that is a playable main character. And that is this. Is Grace Ashcroft going to be another one and done character? Now, if you're not familiar with one and done means, you can check up the link right at the top right hand part of the screen, because I've made a whole plethora of videos talking about characters, for the most part, that are one and done. That means characters that have only appeared in one game that you've played as, and then just mysteriously vanished. I know there's a little bit of leeway with some of them, just because some of them have appeared technically twice because they were in their original game, and then they're in the remake of the original game, but you get the point. And then some, there's a little bit of leeway, but ultimately, one and done. Now, there will be a lot of spoilers in this video, so if you've not played and beaten Resident Evil Requiem, please turn off now. I'm just giving you your first and final warning. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about Grace, because Grace is the brand new character of this game, and being her first introduction, you always want to leave a really good first impression, or people might not want to buy and see you again. And after having seen people play the game, reviewed the game, I think the majority of them have actually said that they enjoyed Grace's introduction. I think a lot of people enjoyed Grace's sections. I've heard a lot of people say that her sections are the best, and that Grace was definitely a success of entering a new character, a brand new character in Resident Evil. And I personally agree with that. The problem that makes me feel that she might be a one and done character is, as strong as she started out, unfortunately, it's like a football game. You start out like gangbusters in the first half, and then in the second half completely just fall asleep and blow the lead. And that's unfortunately how I feel with Grace. I love her first half, but when you start playing the Raccoon City segment as Leon, it completely takes a nosedive. I mean, you only play a short playable segment with her at the very end of the game. So it's just kind of like, yeah, I didn't get a lot of confidence with that, on top of how her story ultimately ended, because there's a little leeway of things I think might make her one and done, and things that might make me think they would possibly continue using her in the future, and she might return as a playable character in a future Resident Evil title. But first, let's go with the doom and gloom method first, and then we'll go to why she might return. So, reason why I personally think that she might not be making a return in the future is the way her story ultimately ended. So one of the big moments in this game is how her story ultimately ended with Emily. Now, Emily was a character that Grace encountered in the care center, and that having spent more time with her, she started to really bond and get to a point where she was very protective of her. And having a moment in the game where she seemingly watched Leon having to put her down after she transformed gave her a sense of dread that she had let another person die, let another person down, like she left her mother, Alyssa, down, and how she internally blames herself. And I thought that was a very good and powerful moment. The problem is that by the end of the game, they completely, underhand that entire emotional moment by saying that, oh, Leon didn't hit her vital points in this scene, and that they are possibly, she might still be alive. And then they show in the end credit scene that apparently they did find her, and that she is now going to be living with Grace, and that Grace is going to be to Emily what Alyssa was to Grace. Basically, I guess having the coincidence and the parallelism of being the foster mother taking up the role of taking care of this child who apparently was seemingly abandoned by the rest of the world. Now, for me personally, I have a little bit of a problem with that. And no, it's not because I'm mean and heartless and I have anything against Emily, because she's definitely a sweet child and unfortunately put in a terrible situation. But I feel like her coming back to life at the end of the game and being found and taken care of, I get what they're trying to do, but I also agree that it kind of takes away from the moment where Grace unfortunately had to watch Leon shoot and put her down after she transformed, and it kind of undermines that, because I think it was a powerful moment, and one of those moments that could have really defined and set off Grace, especially by the end of this game, to be more resolved to do something, which gets me to my point. With the way the game ended, why would Grace ever want to go back out in the field again? Not just because obviously she's still terrified by her initial experience, but now taking care of Emily, there's really no point of it. It gives a sense that this is one of those characters that had, I guess you could say, a happy, good ending. So why would you want to break that up? It would just add more questions than answers. Not saying you couldn't do it, but just the way it ended, it just didn't give me that vibe that Grace is going to be seen fighting more of the injustices on the field. Maybe behind the desk, I could see that, but why would she want to put all that at risk willingly is beyond me. But the way it ended, Emily has a deeper attachment to Grace than anyone else on the planet. And with Grace's perspective, knowing what she went through with her mother, she would want to have the same thing with Emily. What if something would happen to Grace and Emily had to go through that same process? You know, eventually you have to break the cycle, not continue it. So I just feel like from a narrative standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense willingly for Grace to ever return. I mean, she can return like behind the scenes, but in terms of being a main playable character, it doesn't make a lot of sense for her to be willingly doing that. But notice the key word I said, willingly, because we know how Resident works out. Sometimes things don't happen willingly. So now I get to why she might return. And one of the biggest reasons is this. Resident Evil isn't necessarily known for happy endings. I know this one sounds like it, but let's just remember. Ethan, by the end of Resident Evil 7, did find his wife, and he was being planed out of there, and that seemed like that was going to be a one-off ending, and we saw what happened in the next game. So are we going to have another tragic ending in the next game for Grace? But also another big thing, maybe even bigger than that, is this. Is that this game, if you don't already know, it is the fastest selling Resident Evil title by 20 miles. It sold 5 million units in under a week, in about 5 days, which the second fastest time was 5 million units at 4 months for Resident Evil 4 Remake. So my point is, it's extremely popular. It's well received. People love it. And you know about popularity, when you become popular and you become part of something that's popular, a lot of people have a demand to see you again. And while I know that's probably going to be the case definitely for people wanting to see Leon again, I also think that Grace is also going to be associated with that, because I've seen a lot of people praise Grace, not just for her performance, but her story. And even though I don't like how she was kind of just sidelined for the second half, I still think a lot of people would want to see Grace and Grace make a return just because of that popularity. But I would think there'd be something where she's forced into, not that she willingly would do it. I don't think she would put herself in danger and then leave Emily all alone in the world. But ultimately, that's something that, you know, we've seen before in Resident Evil Past, where things have happened that the character wasn't necessarily preparing for. I mean, take Claire and Mora from Revelations 2. They weren't supposed to be on that, but they were unfortunately abducted and forced in that situation. So it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. But hopefully I made my points clear. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of a little conflicted on it, because I would like to see Grace return. I like her as a character, but ultimately I feel like it had to be something that forces her to do it, not her just doing it actively, especially with the whole Emily situation, having her to take care of. But as always, I say, that's my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think Grace is going to be another one-and-done character based on how this game ultimately ends? Or do you think that there is a lot of reasons to bring her back? Not just her popularity, but things within the story or things that could come up in her life. Let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. And hopefully I can see you guys back on the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.